Well, we've already seen 8 named storms by the Met Office alone since the beginning of the season, which started back in September. And the question is, do we go from flood to freeze in the next week to 10 days or so? Thanks for clicking on to the Wednesday edition of Vogan's European Outlook. It is hump day, and it looks as if the Arctic Oscillation, as expected, goes from firm positive to firm negative. You can see the latest run of the GFS ensemble here, taking that Arctic Oscillation into a somewhat of a nosedive, actually, heading back towards the lowest levels that we've seen since back at the end of November, beginning of December, and we know what that delivered. Now, at that early stage in the winter season, the cold is always somewhat restricted, but as we move towards the middle part of January, we do have other elements to consider. The AO and the NAO has a different influence and different impact, say mid to late winter as opposed to the early portion of winter. We've got sea surface temperatures that are colder than they were back at the end of autumn also. So several things to consider. The stratospheric warming situation, we are going to see a minor warming, not necessarily a major warming, but nonetheless, that coupled with the active phase of the MJO in the eastern Indian Ocean and other aspects all looks as if it's honing in on a colder theme. Now, if you looked at the January forecast issued on markvoganweather.com, the link is in the description below, you do see that I don't go to the extreme with regards to cold in January, but I do expect, after a warmer and wetter than average December, I do expect a drier and slightly colder than average January. So, looking back at the month of December, I gave myself an 8 out of 10, but actually, I may have to revise that one possibly to a 9 out of 10. Now, I'm not going to go full hog and say a 10 out of 10. I don't really think there's much forecast out there that can deliver a perfect forecast overall. But I maybe slightly shortchanged myself with that 8 out of 10 because I think when you look back and you reanalyze what was said, it was pretty spot on. And as I go on to say, this is a tweet by Liam Dutton, but I made a little comment at the top of this tweet that said, I guess my December forecast was pretty spot on, including mentions of shades of December 2015. Now, I know there's a few folk out there that will jump on the gun right away and say this is not like December of 2015. But there was shades of that. And the fact that we've had 8 named storms since the month of September, we've had blocking over the North Atlantic and Greenland here, which has displaced the storm track further south. We've got warmer than normal Atlantic waters. There was more fuel for more rainfall, etc., etc. I do believe that strong positive IOD during the early portions of the autumn, the mid portion of autumn, the onset of the El Nino, which, yes, the atmosphere has responded differently to 2015, but I still think there's been shades of that 2015. We've had a terrific amount of rainfall in the last 6 to 8 weeks. There's no getting away from that. October, exceptionally wet. Parts of the UK in November, exceptionally wet. And even for the month of December, has been very wet, particularly across England, Wales, and eastern Scotland. Why is the eastern half of Scotland being wetter than average compared to what you would expect? You would expect to see more of a westerly, wetter than average, drier east. But we've not had that typical westerly Atlantic influence coming straight in off the North Atlantic. We've had it more areas of low pressure. The storm track's been further south. The reason why is because we've had that negative North Atlantic oscillation. You can see this as an interesting tweet here by Mika Rantanen, based in Finland. It's a 300 millibar level here, so it's not quite the 500 millibar, but it represents very nicely the October to December period. And another explainer as to why it's been so cold over Scandinavia, in particular October through December and probably the month of January also, is because of this block, this strong block and high over the North Atlantic. And you can see here, if you look at the North Atlantic oscillation, really from the end of August right the way through to early January, you can see that it's been predominantly negative here, which has then forced the storm track further south. And these areas of low pressure, then come up from a southwesterly direction. And as low pressure is moving in from a southwesterly direction, remember the winds go counterclockwise around an area of low pressure. So therefore, we've had our flow coming in from a very warm waters, Azores, the Canaries, the Eastern Atlantic, and generally, when you've got a storm track riding along that, you're drawing up more moisture from the ocean. When you've got more warmth, you've got more moisture to tap. And we've also seen month after month now, whether it's a direct consequence to the Tonga volcanic eruption or not remains to be seen, but we've had record amounts of water vapor within the atmosphere in our part of the world as well to counteract. Now, is that a byproduct of a volcano that went off in the South Pacific back nearly 2 years ago? Or is it the warmer than average sea surface temperatures drawing up more moisture into the atmosphere? Good question, and let me know in the comments section below what you think of that. But southerly storm track moving in, we've got our flow coming in to the eastern side of the British Isles time after time after time, and that has increased the rainfall. And like I said, with the amount of moisture that we've seen, particularly in the second half of this year, or last year, should I say now, because we're now into 2024, has been quite remarkable. But it has been forecast here on the channel. And I think what makes this 2023 year more interesting is the fact that it was very dry. We had a record dry February, for example, but it has been a very dry first 6 to 7 months of the year, and then we flip things around. Positive IOD, El Nino, warmer than average sea surface temperatures, helped by the fact that we've had significant blocking over the North Atlantic and the Arctic region during that 3 or 4 months time period. But the forecast for December called for slightly warmer than average and wetter than average for the UK and Ireland overall, and that looks as if has materialised. So generally, I'm rather pleased with the forecast that I've delivered, not just in December, but in recent months also here. I'm not trying to blow my own trumpet, but I'm trying to show you the evidence to back up what I say here. There is reasoning behind it. I'm not just looking at one individual model run and saying to myself, this is what I think is going to happen. I'm showing the fact that this is the reasoning behind it. Now, up in the Gulf of Bothnia, which is between Sweden and Finland, we're seeing with very cold conditions, exceptionally cold conditions up in Scandinavia in the last several days, and we're going to continue to see that. The Gulf of Bothnia is now completely frozen. This is another tweet by Mika Rantanen. The last time the bay was frozen this early in the winter was in 2011. So very impressive stuff indeed. The ice cover in the Baltic Sea is now the widest it has been in 13 years. The last winters with more ice at this time of the year was 2010 and 2011. Now the big question is going to be what comes in the next couple of weeks. This is going to be the biggest test of the overall winter forecast, I think. And you know what I've said with regards to it. Having another quick span back, we've had exceptional rain. The River Avon. No surprise here in Bath that we've got flooding conditions here up and down the land. Anywhere from Hampshire and Dorset all the way up to North Yorkshire, we have a flood situation. The north of France also seeing some significant amounts of rain. We've had record-breaking rain for the very reasons that I just highlighted a second or two ago there with regards to the storm track and other factors here. This is an interesting tweet here, but the only problem is he doesn't actually, Peter Dines, I think it is, or Danes, whatever way you pronounce it. I do apologise if I get that wrong. But this is an interesting map here, but unfortunately it doesn't give you when it was, but it represents quite nicely, I think, the October through December rainfall in general, but we don't have anything to go by. What month was it? Was it several months or was it anything else? This is the rain warnings issued by the Environment Agents here. So we've got exceptional rain. Like I said, this has got similarities, not completely, but similarities to 2015. The golden question is going to be, this is also the scene here from Leicester earlier today. So pretty serious stuff, I must admit. Pretty devastating, I would say, to start off the year in for several people here, and then you've got the several other parts of the world that has seen tremendous amounts of rainfall here. Speaking about that tremendous cold over parts of Sweden, it was in fact a record for this one particular location, an all-time record cold temperature, minus 43.6 Celsius. It is Sweden's coldest temperature since December 2021, when we had a minus 43.8. In yesterday's video, I said it was the coldest since January 1999, when the temperature hit minus 49, but in fact it was the second coldest since 1999. So I just wanted to highlight that to you, to continue to strive to show you accurate information as opposed to hypecast, clickbait. I'm not into that, folks. I'm genuinely wanting to provide you with accurate information in a non-hyped way as well, by the way. So here's an interesting tweet. GFS, the ensemble, it's not a tweet, it's the website. This is the GFS ensemble for London at 850 millibars, so 5,000 feet above the surface. And you can see that we go from slightly above average and it nosedives down towards minus 8 Celsius above London around the 8th or the 9th of January here. So you can see the 850 temperature starting to nosedive. We'll look at why that's going to happen in just a second here. This is for Inverness at the top end of the UK. You can see here slightly colder than average, but nothing extreme. Now, I'll give you another reason why I think that might be the case as well. This is for Manchester also, same period, same nosedive overall. Now, actually, before we look at the 500 millibar geopotential height anomalies here, this is off the CFSV2. The current model is updating, so I'm giving you a slightly out-of-date version, unfortunately. I don't like to do that, but I have to in this case because of the time of the day that I publish these videos. But you can see here that we have got a very significant change, not so much in terms of temperature, which I think we are going to see, but also rainfall. We've seen so much rain in recent times. The ground's saturated and we don't need any more. The good thing is that it looks as if that we are heading into a relatively prolonged spell of drier than average conditions. This is week 1. You can see here drier than average across the UK and Ireland. The heart of Europe here is wetter than average. If you notice here, drier further north. Week 2, we continue with that dry theme, and then into week 3, it looks as if we may start to see things changing around. This is a period between the 16th and the 23rd of January. Let's have a look and see what the 500 millibar geopotential heights are looking like. So we've got the trough over the central swathe of Europe, including the UK, but notice the high over Iceland and to the northwest of the UK. This is week 2. You can see here that that high strengthens, and with very cold air over Scandinavia, we need to just keep an eye on that in terms of trying to draw some of that cold air off Scandinavia towards our neck of the woods. Into week 3, you can see here that the pattern does flip around according to the CFSV2. I'm a little bit dubious of that based on MJO, stratosphere, etc., etc. This is the temperature anomalies here, week 1. You can see wet, warmer than average across the UK and the majority of Ireland here. Week 2, colder than average, and then week 3, it goes back warmer than average once again here. Now, I think based on the fact that we've had a weakened polar vortex in recent times and continue to do so, also with the fairly strong East QBO as well, I think things are coming together reasonably nicely. And if we look at the ECMWF, this is the weeklies and the extended. You can see at 500 millibars, this is looking over the Arctic region here. So North America, Greenland, Iceland, UK. This is the upcoming week. You can see here we've got the negative underneath. We've got the positive now up towards the northwest of the British Isles. Now, as we play it through, you watch here the strengthening of that high to the northwest of the UK, and then watch as it starts to retrograde. It starts to pull back towards Greenland, and that, folks, is an increasingly cold pattern during the middle to second half of January, and it will all depend on exactly how that high moves. But the Arctic Oscillation is going into the tank. GFS ensemble shows this, and the North Atlantic Oscillation is going into the tank as well. I would be surprised if we don't hold on to at least a 10-day spell of colder than average conditions and increased threat of snow coming up as well. And we'll look at that in more detail in the next few days. So stay tuned for that. Like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you again tomorrow with more. Bye for now.